So, Taft, not a good fit. We can pretty much agree with that, especially if you are on Roosevelt's team. Who is the true trust buster? Taft, by far. Okay, 16th Amendment. What was that? Shade? Very good. Dollar diplomacy, pumping money into other countries so we can press our interests there. The bottom line is, it's not so much that we were pressing our interests. It was more so we don't want other countries to press their interests. You see how I did that? You see how I explained that? It doesn't mean so much we're going to influence them, but we don't want anybody else to. The last thing we want is socialism and communism coming in. That's going to play a big role in the 60s. We're going to have a Red Scare coming. Okay, so let's take a look at this. What's going on the right side? Don't even look at the left. What's happening here? Who wants to interpret? And what's the deal? What's the message? What's the point of view?
Roosevelt led the way from town. And he owned. He doesn't own it really. It has PR on his neck.
Well, doesn't Little Bo Peep own the sheep?
Yeah.
Except when she lost them.
That's what he did. He lost Taft because Taft got rid of him.
Yeah, but he gets his revenge. All right, so let's read through this real quick. Lindsay, please.
William Howard Taft followed Teddy Roosevelt as president. Roosevelt, big stick diplomacy. Taft, dollar diplomacy. U.S. businesses would invest in countries to convince them to be friendly to the U.S.
Keep going.
The president, William Taft, his diplomacy, dollar diplomacy. What it meant: focused diplomacy on Latin America and Asia. Used economics, trade, and/or aid instead of military to foster good foreign relations. Taft called it trading dollars for bullets.
Now, I realize in a time of a pandemic and things like that, you might not be thinking of world affairs. But does anybody know what the possibility is with Russia and the Ukraine? Have you heard anything or checking that out at all? The Ukraine was once part of Russia. Russia seized part of the Crimea, which was part of the Ukraine back when President Obama was in office. Now the threat is to take all of the Ukraine, which the United States absolutely does not want to see happen on a worldwide scale. So now the Soviet Union, which was the Soviet Union, now Russia, says that they are going to influence Latin American countries. So here we go again. This whole thing all over again. Latin America, the big one that we're going to talk about is Cuba, when the Soviet Union wanted to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. Well, they actually were already there. We'll talk about it. But now we can refer that back to dollar diplomacy. Latin America is too close to our doorstep. That's why we don't want any influence there. So you pay somebody money, they'll be your friend, it works out great. Not always. But that's the idea of dollar diplomacy.
Somebody else pays them for it, they'll be there for them.
Now, does anybody remember which party raises tariffs? Which down? Lowers. Democrats. Take a look at this. Payne-Aldrich, which was actually a compromise tariff. This is big. I ask somebody to read that, please. What's going on the picture on the left? Which these both, they were from the time period. Those aren't later on that people draw these things. What's happening?
Taft is taking care of the country while Roosevelt is gone.
Okay. And what's happening? And notice the bellboy there. See that in the bottom left? Take your big stick with you, right? How about over there on the right? What's happening there?
He's yelling at Taft for what he did while he's gone.
Okay. All right. So what's this Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act? Let's take a look at this. Madden, please.
Definition and summary of the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act. Definition and summary and definition. The Payne-Aldrich Act was essentially a compromise between the proposal of New York Representative Cyrano E. Payne and Rhode Island Senator Nelson W. Aldrich. The Payne proposal supported by President Taft, was progressive, was designed to lower tariff rates. It met better oppositions by conservative Republicans who wanted to protect higher tariffs, which led to the Aldrich proposal. The compromise paying Aldrich tariff act had the effect of reducing tariff rates, but also enacted a corporation tax. The Payne Aldrich Tariff Act split the Republican Party. President Taft alienated both the progressivism and conservation Republicans and gained a reputation for being weak and indecisive.
And this really was the nail in the coffin as far as Roosevelt was concerned. Okay? Remember, Roosevelt raising and Taft, they called him a sellout, and those last two there, weak and indecisive. Okay, so what's happening here? Notice the years. Katie?
So it looks like they're nominating Roosevelt in the first one, and then it looks like Roosevelt didn't like what Taft did, so now he wants the presidency back.
I agree with everything you said except that first one there. Who's being nominated there? That's Taft, yes. And now he wants it back. Again, these political cartoons were drawn at the time period. So in 1912 is when you would have seen this. Political cartoon. You pick up a newspaper, that's what you're seeing. So Roosevelt wants the party back. Okay, so let's read through this. Kemper.
I want to be a bullmoose. I like the bullmoose stand with the antlers on my forehead and a big stick in my hand.
That is. We are fishing in the Salmon River in Wyoming. We are trout fishing. And that's Dan Lynch. He actually works for the Game Commission. And there was one other guy there, and I was yelling, "Look behind you!" And he was like, "What are you talking about, man?" He looks behind him and it looks back. That was his reaction when he looked back. Now notice that's a mom and a little one, and the last thing you ever want to be is between them. But they pass through. Now that fish in the top right, one of the smallest fish I've ever caught in my life. But I'll tell you this, I have more pride in that fish, I think, than any fish I've ever caught. And you know why? Because I actually tied the fly. That was the first time I learned it, and I actually did tie that fly. And I'll tell you what, that gives you a sense of accomplishment. You buy a lure out of the store, that's great, no problem, but you actually tie the fly, it's one thing. Why do I mention that? Well, on a soapbox here a little bit, but actually, it's considered a lifelong activity. Health and wellness, fly tying.
Fish things sound boring.
Well, can be.
We don't catch it.
All right. So what happened here? That was what he was talking about, the assassination attempt. And since he had the glasses and a really long speech wrapped up in his coat pocket, he said long-windedness and myopia saved his life. Obviously, myopia is a vision condition. Yeah. Okay, moving on then. Let's read the summary real fast. Go, Kipper, go.
William Howard Taft became president in 1909, pursued many progressive policies, but more cautiously and with less publicity than Roosevelt, and he divided his own party. One issue was the tariff. Taft wished to lower the tariffs. When conservatives in the Senate passed a weakened version of the measure, Taft signed it anyway. Progressives complained. He also angered conservationists by appointing officials who favored development of wild lands rather than preservation of them. With the Republican Party split between the reformers and conservatives, Democrats won control of the House for the first time in almost 2 decades. In 1912, Roosevelt tried to regain the Republican nomination for president, failing that Roosevelt formed the third party, the Women's Party, and ran on the platform of reform. The Democrats nominated reformer Woodrow Wilson, governor of New Jersey, as Taft and Roosevelt bitterly denounced each other. Wilson won the election, and a Democratic majority in Congress, about 3/4 of the vote, went to the candidates in favor of economic reform.
Okay, so as you can see there, 1912. Okay, now we'll get to that page 6, but take a look at what's going on. Start at the top left and come down, just like you do when you read something. Okay, so let's describe first, how are they acting? Who's the guy in the top left? How are they acting? Roosevelt, the guy in the middle? That's Wilson, the guy on the right? How are they acting? Katie?
They're like happy and laughing.
How do they feel?
nervous.
Nail Biden.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. Roosevelt and Taft did notice Democratic candidate Woodrow Wilson. They were too busy beating up on each other that all of a sudden here comes this guy, Woodrow Wilson, okay, winning America's heart in Electoral College. For this reason, this was the battle that lost the White House. It was kind of like a James K. Polk thing, the dark horse candidate. Now, Woodrow Wilson was well known, as you saw back here. He was the governor of New Jersey. He was also the president of Princeton University. Now, wait a minute. Was he the president? He was a professor, though. I don't know if he was president. I'll have to check that myself. But nonetheless, here comes Roosevelt. Here goes out Roosevelt and Taft, and here comes Wilson. Okay, so let's take a look at this. 1912, Wilson welcomed into the presidency by progressives. Take a look at this. How overwhelming it was. Notice there's Eugene V. Debs. He got about 1 million votes this time. Once again,
Wasn't he in jail or something?
he was. Yeah, he was in jail again. 1908, he was on the ballot but was in jail.
What a reputation.
Here's a question for you. What if he would have won? Would he have been able to pardon himself? Probably. Probably.
What's the little dot in California?
Little dot, California.
Where there's 2 votes.
Yeah, but-
Oh, because at that time they actually divided their electoral votes. Okay, so most states, it's if one state wins the state, they get all of them.
Yeah.
California wasn't that way. There are 2 states today, and I forget which one it is, that do not divide their electoral college. Okay, Wilson's background. Go, Lindsay.
He spent his youth in the South during the Civil War and Reconstruction. He had strict upbringing and a minister father. Before entering politics, he was a lawyer, history professor, and president of
Ah, was right.
Elected governor of New Jersey in 1910.
Okay, keep going.
Wilson became the only elected president from the Democratic Party between 1892 and 1932, and the second to only 2 Democrats to be elected president between 1860 and 1932.
That's pretty awesome when you think about it. Did you realize that as we were going through this about the Democratic Party? Just literally did not have a president other than Wilson. Okay. Okay. His financial reform, TBT, trust, banking, and tariffs. Trust, banking, and tariffs. Choice of philosophy. There's the new nationalism, which is the taxes on incomes, corporations, allow consolidation of trusts and unions, but more regulatory agencies, women's suffrage. Take a look at this. Wilson believed in new freedom. Lower tariffs, small enterprise, unregulated markets, kind of the same thing. Competition where you don't have the trust busting. Okay? Hated trusts, antitrust act, but as far as taking a long stand against it, no. Unions, though, are okay. There's that Clayton Antitrust Act. Remember what I told you before, that the antitrust laws actually banned labor unions, so the very workers you're trying to help actually couldn't unionize. Well, the Clayton Antitrust Act said unions are okay. That could be a trust. So if you're in a labor union, it's all right. Anti-tariff, low tariffs would restrict business and power, and there's your graduated income tax. Okay, do this real quick. Go to page 56. Okay, take a look at the charts there. And take a look at that new nationalism, new freedom. We are actually very quickly coming up on the end of this chapter, okay? Of course, one of the biggest parts of the chapter, the progressive movement, one we didn't talk about yet is what? Say that louder.
Women's suffrage.
Women's suffrage, yes. That's a biggie. Okay, as far as African Americans, Wilson, no. He did not want to sign the 19th Amendment either, but that does actually happen. Civil rights are really going to have to wait till the 1950s, thanks in no small part to World War II. Okay, but we'll get to that. All right, so take a minute, look over that chart there. And we'll take a look at the new freedom video then tomorrow. Everybody clear with what's due when? Okay. I did say that the women's suffrage, I would move it one more day just because of the 2-hour delays, but you're going to end up doing it, so you might as well knock it out. Okay.
So is that due tomorrow or Thursday?
I will accept it Thursday without penalty.